$1,900. It's a lot. It's a lot.
1,900
people laid off.
Well, yeah. Richard was texting me about this day. I was trying to figure out the actual size of the businesses involved, and then I think finally, Phil Spencer kind of came clean on that. And actually, Richard's back of the napkin. Math was correct. It was a little under 10%, like 9%.
I think it was 8.5, something like that. It was 1,900 out of 22,000 people.
So, I mean, the only thing I'll say to this is they're rolling Activision Blizzard into Xbox. So this was going to happen. There are redundancies. I mean, it already started happening at the high executive level. I mean, it's, I don't mean to shrug it off. I literally just shrugged, but I didn't mean it like that. Like, I didn't mean like it doesn't matter. I just mean, logically, we kind of knew this was going to happen, right?
Yeah, we knew it would happen. It's a given, right? You have a multi-billion-dollar org being absorbed into a $3 trillion org, and
like a jellyfish.
You don't need middle accountants, or managerial accountants. You just need staff accountants. You just need.
Well, you need one set. I mean, I guess I don't know, from the perspective of the health of the business, I guess you take the best employees, right? I mean, so. I mean, you can argue it's a good thing, sort of. But yeah, this is, whatever. Layoffs are always awful,
Yep. Yeah, some of the other, aside from awfulness, some of the other interesting layoffs that occurred, it looked like not part of Activision, I could be wrong on that, but looks like Microsoft really did some deep cuts into the physical game Xbox team. Like the people were in charge of hey, actually getting physical games on
retail
shelves.
packaging and
retail. I couldn't think of the word. Sure. And so I've seen other things from around, actually from people who work at various retail outlets have sent images saying look, there's no more Xbox physical games. I think we've heard Best Buy is getting rid of them. And it sounds like, in 5 years from now, we're going to look at these games the same way we kind of look at vinyl records, right? There's going to be a small group of
I was going to say,
like
in 10 years, there'll be like a nostalgia for physical games, and there'll be people buying them in bins in stores, and those stores will be record stores, I guess. They'll look. You could right now buy on a cartridge a brand new Atari 2600 game. It's a thing.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean that it's like a big thing, but for those kind of nostalgic types or whatever, I mean, it is a thing. But I'm always fascinated by how something that's first considered radical is pushed back on immediately. And then there becomes a transition period where the sum of, the old way and the new way, and then the old way just goes away, right? So cloud computing has not completed that transition and maybe never will, but it went from whoa, we're not putting our data in the cloud to obviously we're putting our data in the cloud. I mean, I think AI is going to go through this transition. There's a little bit of pushback there in certain circles, but it's guys, this trend's inevitable. So it's happening. I mean, any physical games are this, they're just physical media as much as DVDs and Blu-rays and CDs and,
Yep.
So it makes sense. I jumped on this as soon as I could, Brad. I as much as, I mean, I used to enjoy going to Best Buy at midnight to buy the latest Call of Duty with my kid. It was always great. But I mean, you can't beat the portability. It's all the same reasons you can't argue against it. It's just, you can actually, there are reasons, right? You can't resell them, at least easily. I seem to remember you had information years ago about some sort of the
disc to digital.
Yes, and I don't think they
never did
ended up doing. Yeah, it's probably too easily faked,
Well, at this point, I guarantee there was probably some cost benefit analysis done. They probably came up with this idea because they're hey, this is going to be a great way to bridge this gap, right? We'll do right for the consumer. We'll allow them to bring their stuff in and I don't know, uptrade them, whatever you want to call that process. But then it just kind of fizzled out to people are just gonna whatever migrate
It's
slowly,
exactly, yeah,
naturally.
it's a cost, and they move on because Xbox platform evolves. I mean, one of the nice things, well, actually, that is one of the one of the nice things about the Xbox platform is that there's a lot of backward
Right.
compatibility built into the platform now. But yeah, that works when you have digital, right? So, um, I don't know. Obviously, there's diminishing returns as you go back in time. If you're on
Hmm.
an Xbox Series, whatever, Xbox One, yep, Xbox 360, sometimes. But Xbox OG, I mean, other than nostalgia, it's like not really, right? Like no one's booting up the original 48, 40p version of Halo Combat
Hmm.
Evolved or whatever. I mean, not really. I mean, not in volume.
I think that also plays into it because they look at it and say, "Look, we can sell Paul throughout the same game again."
I listened. This is the reason George Lucas was able to retire. I bought those movies every single time I could on every single version on every single
Hmm.
platform. And yeah, I've done that with Call of Duty. I mean, not
Yeah.
well. I mean, yeah. I mean, look, I'm going to pay a perpetual license for Game Pass so I can play these games the rest of my life. So I mean,
Hmm.
I guess it's working out for him, but I guess it's working out for me too if that's what I want.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well.
I don't know. There's always that argument, but this is just inevitable. Obviously, it's one of those things I haven't thought about explicitly, but then when confronted by it, you're like, yeah, no, I mean, this is what's going to happen.
Well, for a little nostalgia, if you want to play Fortnite on an iPhone, you can move to a specific set of European countries and then
Right.
sideload it legally.
This is going to be interesting time stuff. The reason this is so screwed up is that Apple, which is fighting this tooth and nail, is going to not do this everywhere like it should.
Right.
This is the problem. And this is a great example of Apple talking about having values and then doing something completely different in real life, and then making the argument that it's for your security or your privacy or whatever it is. And no, it's just that you're awful and you're a money generating machine and you can't stand making less revenues. And you know, every there, this is one of the most divisive debates of our community, I would say. This kind
Hmm.
of app store thing, and you have like this spectrum of people where on some far end on one side it's like Apple should be able to do anything they want,
Right.
right, just point blank. And then there are the people on the other fringe side that are like Apple shouldn't be able to do anything, you know. And it's like, guys, everything is a little more nuanced than that. But
Hmm.
I don't understand the people who disagree with the central unfairness of Apple's policies, and I have a big problem with Apple and the way they do things. And it's because it affects everybody. Because Google
Right.
just is like, well, they're getting away with it. We'll do the same thing. And Google is just as terrible. So
Yeah. I mean, they.
I look, but the advantage that Apple has over
Hmm.
Google actually, and over everybody else in the whole world, is that they make incredible uh, 40 to 50% margins on hardware,
Hmm.
which subsidizes all of this stuff. And so people will say, well, the App Store doesn't pay for itself, and you got yeah, actually it does. That's the point. The App Store is part of a virtuous cycle that makes people buy more iPhones and more ecosystem devices. It benefits Apple very directly. There is no shortfall on Apple's part. Apple has gotten very comfortable with margins on hardware that are impossible for anyone else and just don't exist. Like, so it's a different world, and I think that obviates pretty much all of the complaints. When I say something like, well, MasterCard charges 3%, that the Apple could
Hmm.
charge 3%. It's like, no, their costs are more, they blah, blah. No, they aren't. They make a bigger profit. They're actually much bigger than MasterCard. And that part of their business is much bigger than all of MasterCard. They're actually not comparable, and not for the reason that you think. It's the opposite of what you think. And I just the security stuff that's built into the platform is literally built into iOS. It's not the apps. It has nothing to do with the App Store. And Apple right now is trying to do this Microsoft argument in 1999, where IE is an integrated component of Windows, and we're just going to take the stand on this. And Apple is trying to argue that there's something about the App Store that is special. That blah blah blah. And there's nothing special about it.
Hmm.
It's there are many good reasons to use an iPhone or an Apple device or any Apple product, but among them, honestly, is, and this honestly, this is, people don't like this, but it's true of Android as well, The built-in security, which is kind of end-to-end, includes hardware and software components as well as encryption with services and so forth. It's just it's part of what makes passkeys work, right? I mean, it's literally an integrated end-to-end system, and it's on the device, and it has nothing to do with an app store. And they're charging 30% for nothing. Literally, is unethical, and I would like it to be illegal. So anyway, you look at what they're doing in the EU, and you're like, oh, I guess you can do this, huh? Interesting. And
Yep.
I don't know. There's only two approaches. You can be belligerent and make it complicated for yourself and your customers by making it different everywhere, or you just do the right thing everywhere, and then you are the company you pretend you are. And they're not going to do that. I mean, maybe eventually they'll be forced to, but you can just see the way they talk about it. EU customers aren't going to be as safe as and it's like, shut up. That's so stop. I don't know. It's very upsetting.
What are you gonna
Anything
do?
else you want me to rant about?
I don't know.
Here's something for you. This is no, it's not a rant. It is sort of a rant, but you as an iPhone user might appreciate this because it's semi-related. It has nothing to do with antitrust or anything.
Mm-hmm.
I'm consolidating my photo collection.
Yep.
I've come right down to the wire. I'm done through 2022. Like I've done it. Like that's pretty much the collection.
Mission accomplished.
Right? Yeah. But I'm looking at 2023 and I'm thinking to myself, going forward, like these things are like all my phones are backed up to the cloud. They go to most of the places where I want those photos, right? But I would still like to have a copy of that stuff locally, meaning like on a NAS. And maybe in the future I'll have a NAS where there'll be an app and that will happen automatically. But for right now, what that means to me is like for 2023, like 2022, I actually do have to consolidate those photos and put them in a couple of different places. So I'm like, well, okay, that's interesting. So I pulled up my iPhone, I pulled up my Pixel, and I connected it to my computer, and I downloaded the photos just to have them there, just so I could work with them and see what was there from 2023. And then I hooked my iPhone to the computer, and you go through this multi-step process where you plug, unplug, and finally it's like, do you want to trust this computer? Like, yes. And then you go onto the computer, what do you want to do with this thing? And you open it up, and you get to the one folder you could even look at in File Explorer, and it's these stupid folder names that are where the photos are. And so you copy them to a folder on the desktop, except you don't, because it ends like in 1 second. And there are thousands of files, but it copies 18 of them. And you're like, okay. And then you start the file copy again. And it never works. I reboot the phone. I reboot the computer. I use different cables. I can never get this thing to work. And I'm like, you know what? Whatever. I have a Mac. I'm going to use a Mac. I'll just do it in Finder. Obviously, that's going to work fantastic. Have you ever connected an iPhone to a Mac? You don't get to file. There's no file view. You can't drag files into the Finder. You have to use a special interface comes up, and you could just sync the photos. And I could not figure out a way to sync them to the computer. You just sync them to iCloud. I'm not doing that. You know how I had to do this? We're doing this right now. I don't know if it's done or not. The only way I could get this to work, this is so crazy, was I connected an SSD to it. And then in the Photos app on the iPhone, I tried the Files app first. You have to select like a jerk, like all of your photos. There were 1,835 of them, I think. So that took 5 minutes because it's scrolling up the list. Like there's no select all, right? And then you can do, I don't know what it is, share. There's something where it retains all the dates and location data, and then you choose a target, and the target is the SSD, which shows up in the browser thing. That's how I had to do it. Like that's how dumb the iPhone is. It's I don't know, trying to hide the complexity of what is essentially a computer from the user. They have made this thing bizarrely hard to do something. Granted that people don't necessarily have to do a lot, but in part, I think, to drive people to use their cloud service. And, because part of what makes it easy is if you just pay for it, you'll have enough storage. It can all go up to the cloud. And I'm like, I'm not putting my photos in Apple's iCloud. I'm not. I'm sorry. I use something else. And because I don't know, have free will or something, and oh God, I use them. Although oddly, the experience on the PC should be better if the file copy worked. God forbid I use a Windows PC, right? I mean, but whatever. I had to use like an external SSD. And by the way, I'm assuming it worked. It appeared to be working. After we're done, I'm going to go look at the little baby in the cradle and see if it's going okay. I don't trust them. I don't.
See, I just solved that problem by paying for all the cloud storages, and
yeah, no,
it's
that's
unfortunate.
that's an approach. I mean,
Well, that's the only way I could get the stupid photos easily without jumping through some godforsaken hoops to get photos that we take onto photos on the
like
TV
on
and
your
on the
Apple
wallpaper.
TV. Exactly. Yep. It has to go through iPhoto. Yep.
Yeah.
Or what do they call it?
And so,
yeah, it's yeah. No, this is the thing, and I know. And listen, once you accept, you're in the warm matrix. It's everything's great, and people argue for that, and I get it. And by the way, I'm about to, I was about to, and maybe I will sometime soon write this article that came up out of my Pixel 8 Pro review, which is that the Pixel ecosystem, and I suspect much like the Samsung ecosystem, is a pale, sad imitation of what Apple has done. And there are advantages to what Apple does. I want to be clear about that. But, you know, I mean, I have such a good experience with this one phone. You know, I've struggled with the phones, but like when you look at the ecosystem products, services are usually pretty good actually, but the products, the other hardware, I can't, well, I'm not going to do this today, but you'll either maybe the next time we talk or whenever I put this article out, you're not going to believe how they have to contort cases on the Pixel tablet because Google wants it to suck onto a stand so that it can be used as a display.
Yeah.
So, you know, if you think about like an iPhone case, you would open it like in a normal kind of a book way. Because of how everything is backwards, because of this ability, the case actually opens the other way, like it's backwards, because they were like, we're going to make this thing into a smart display. That's what we decided. And it's like, guys, I'm sorry. It's a great smart display. And it's an okay tablet, but it needs to be, you know, it's just so compromised, and Apple would never have allowed that ever. They would have put so many magnets in this thing so it could work the right way that people with pacemakers would have been dying, and they would have been like, we don't care. The design's perfect. And you know, and I got to say, I don't mean literally that people would die, but I mean like, that's another kind of problem. It's just bad design, like compromised, terrible design for some stupid goal that very few people actually want. You know, that's the opposite of Apple right there.
I feel like that kind of.
So nothing's perfect is my point. Yeah. I can complain about Google too. Don't worry, I got it all. You want to talk about Microsoft a little bit?
Look at the time.
How much time you get?